You sell on Instagram, right?
Right.
Yep. So where do you sell on any other platforms?
Yeah. I have an Etsy shop named Quimby's Closet. And back when I was homeschool mom, which is, let me see, 24 years ago, maybe, um, I sold vintage books on eBay. So I've been an eBay buyer and seller since almost the year they started. And my girls and I would go to library discard sales, and I taught them what to look for, and each of them was drilled in the car on the way. What authors we were looking for, either because we needed them for school or I could sell them to buy the curriculum we needed. And then we would fan out in a triangle.
Love it. It's like a little
And
vintage tea.
so, yeah, another homeschool mom once told me that she watched us working a row of tables and said, "You were kind of scary looking. The three of you were so serious." But eBay is how we bought a lot of our curriculum and a lot of the little extras that we wanted to have during those days.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I supported myself with selling vintage clothes on eBay through college because
mm-hmm.
I had a job and was like, well, I
Yeah,
can go to the store and buy vintage clothes.
right. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
right.
Yeah. So are your kids into vintage now?
Oh, yes. Yes, my well, I kind of continued the Christmas thing. They got a mix of what I call normal Christmas gifts. But there were always vintage things, and they would have been, I think, upset, if there hadn't been. But yeah, my older daughter lives in Missouri, and her side gig is selling on eBay, and she's cashing in on her knowledge of the 80s and the 90s, which I know nothing about, but she grew up in
Mhm.
it, and so she's good at that. Then my younger daughter out in Oregon, she sold so much on Instagram that she paid medical bills and things for her family. And she kind of introduced me to the 1950s kitsch that I have all over my houses, now.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah. And my grandkids, they, say we're going to the flea market or we're going to the thrift store, and everybody's grabbing for their coats because it's
Love
the
it.
thrill of the hunt.
Absolutely. So you're not worried that no one's gonna want to inherit your collections.
No, I'm not worried at all.
I hear that from so many people that, especially a lot of the buyers, so they're just like, I don't know who's gonna take all this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, my husband says I cannot go first because he doesn't know what he would do. But I tell him, my girls are now so knowledgeable that they'll be able to come in and say, this is what they want, and they'll know where to sell it. They'll know what to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's,
Yeah.
it's not like my stuff's going to end up at the Salvation Army.
Yeah. Exactly. It's got a good future ahead of it, and it's
Right.
meant for your family,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so wonderful. I love that you have just a whole vintage loving family from your mom to your
Oh,
kids and
Oh
grandkids.
yeah. Even
Wonderful.
my husband. My husband had never been to a flea market until we met. He was 31 years old and I was 24. But he saw the handwriting on the wall because when he would say, "What do you want to do?" I would say, "Oh, I want to go to Tulsa to the flea markets, or I want to go to Joplin, to the flea market." And he is so into it now that he loves to go to auctions. He bought a picture in our hometown. We almost ended up on Antiques Roadshow because of it. But he loves pictures. I think our house would just be papered in pictures if he had his
Like
way.
photographs?
What?
Do you mean like
Photographs? No, he likes prints and
photographs?
artwork and stuff like that.
Oh. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of I have found so many amazing artwork pieces at thrift stores that I'm just like, how does somebody just throw that
Yes.
away?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, original paintings and like from known people, and like people just don't know. They don't know
No,
what.
right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
It's amazing to me.
Well, sometimes their family just sees it as that old junk.
Yeah.
You know, when my mom was selling depression glass in the 70s, when older women would walk up to the stand and see the depression glass, they had one of two reactions to it. They would love it because even though times were hard, it reminded them of good family memories, and or they hated it. And they would say things like, "That's the first thing I threw out. As soon as I could buy better dishes, I got rid of, that."
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, that's my mom. My mom hates, she calls it all just old junk. She hates vintage stuff, hates antique stuff, unless it has family sentimental value.
right.
She hates it because she was the youngest child of three, and so growing up, she
Hand me downs.
yes, and so now she's like
Yep.
new.
Yep.
So it baffles her that somehow I ended up in this business
Right.
because she's
Where
just
did
like,
this gene come from?
yeah, it's so funny. So speaking of your business, do you have any goals for your business?
well, well, to still have it in place when I am ready to retire in 6 or 7 years. Um, no, I think I really haven't thought, that far
That's great.
yet. I'd like to someday hit 1,000 sales on Etsy. Is that good enough? I'm over 200, and I had a little mini celebration here in the house. But yeah,
Wonderful. Yeah, I mean those are good goals to be able to have that still going, when you are ready to retire,
right.
something to do because I know that so many people I know that have retired, they say that like they immediately have to find something else to start doing.
Oh yeah, no,
Go stir crazy. So having that in place, that's like insurance.
yes, oh yeah,
Keep you busy and make extra money.
that's
That's so
right.
fun. Yeah. So I meant to ask earlier, who is Quimby?
Oh, Quimby was my Solomon Island eclectus parrot.
Oh, okay.
So yes, yeah, I had him for 15 years. So did you ever read the Ramona Quimby books when you were
Yeah.
growing up? Okay. So when I met Quimby, we were homeschooling then, and I got a part-time job at the pet store that started before the school day. And um, I cleaned cages and helped clean the shop before they opened it. And one day when I went in, there were several new parrots, and there was this beautiful young green parrot with a bird that had a candy corn beak. And I fell in love with him. And so he was in the pet shop for close to a year, and I finally bought him. And I named him Quimby because, like Ramona, I figured he was going to be a lot of trouble.
Did he live up to his name?
What?
Did he live up to his name?
Oh yeah. All par all parrots are like having a toddler. Do you have children?
No.
Okay. Well, when I worked at the pet store more hours when my daughter was older, and people would come in and look at birds, I would say, "Did you like being with your child when they were 3?" Because that's what having a parrot in the house is like. An African gray has the brain of a 5-year-old, and an eclectus, and they can be just as manipulative as those little. Right. So yes, he lived up to his name.
Wow. That's so cool. I would not have guessed that Quimby was a parrot. I assumed he was maybe a child or a grandchild.
No, if you look at my shop logo, it's 3 little birds.
Now it
And
makes
so
sense.
that's your hint that Quimby was a bird. Yes.
Gotcha. All right. That totally makes sense. All right. So, kind of wrapping up, do you have any tips for other sellers that are trying to start out, maybe in paper specifically, or who are established
Or just in general,
in general?
um, really get to know what you want to sell. Um, if you don't, you're going to make a lot of the elementary mistakes that I made at first.
Mhm.
Um, Become an eBay surfer. eBay is like the price guides. When my mom was in business in the 1970s, every year she would buy the updated depression glass price guide and the Hall China price guide. Today we have eBay. Get in there, search, look at sold, start learning. You familiar with Shawnee pottery?
Yes.
Okay, so if you look at Shawnee pottery, there are different grades of Shawnee pottery. And back when Shawnee was bringing more, those different grades meant a big deal with your price. Maybe you had one that was cold painted. Well, that's the least valuable. But if you had one that was glazed, had uh, gold metallic extra paint and decals on it, that was the highest. So really get to know it and make sure it's in really good condition. There are some things that you can sell and people want it regardless of whether it has a chip or a crack. It's just that rare. But when you're selling paper, it can't smell. It can be aged, but it cannot be dirty. And sometimes that's hard because often when you go to an estate sale or a flea market, that paper was in a box in someone's shed or in their basement or their attic. If you pick up a piece of paper at a flea market and you can't get that gritty feeling off just by standing there and rubbing it a few minutes, don't buy it because, you know, your crafter doesn't want that in their junk journal. They don't want that in their scrapbook.
In it.
What?
You can't really clean paper.
You can, well, I have brushed paper off, brushed
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
And depending on the how delicate the paper is, used a smaller paintbrush or whatever. You also need to, if you're going to sell paper, learn a little bit more about the acid content that old paper has. Like newspapers, very high acid content, which makes them very brittle. And so when a buyer wants to craft with it, you fold that in half. Oftentimes, it's just going to split in two. But so learn a little bit more about paper and the cloth content and the acid content in it.
Mhm. What do you say is your best sellers? Like, what kind of
Oh,
things?
I would say that the really kitschy stuff, the really cute. Um, it seems like my Instagram followers love kitty cats.
Yeah.
They love kitty cats. They love cute kids. They like bright colors and happy faces and things like that. So,
Absolutely. Which are all great things for scrapbooking. Which,
yes. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
that makes sense. That completely makes sense. Wonderful. Well, that's all the questions I had for you today.
Great.
I've had a wonderful time talking to you, and I've learned a lot. So thank
Oh,
you
good.
so much.
I've
Thank
had a
you.
lot of fun too.
Thank you. Well, it was wonderful getting to know you, and I will see you on Instagram.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
A big thank you to Debbie from at Quimby's Closet. We learned so much from you today. Definitely go check out her shop if you love ephemera and paper crafts. Thanks, guys.